Hello, this is Walter, and apologize for not getting some of my videos out. I'm still working on my glove box, and I'm going to get into more training type articles, or I'm going to be getting into more training oriented videos here really quick. But I'm working on some projects that I just need to get done, so I thought I'd share some of this information with people because expanding your horizons a little bit in your mind and looking how people may do things can help you in other areas of your life and training in particular, because sometimes people think, well, I don't have this piece of equipment, or I don't have access to a gym, or I'm only in this situation to train and I can't, how am I going to do this? Well, you just have to learn how to think outside the box and how to improvise with what you have, adapt what you have, and adapt yourself. So in this case, in Tucson, it gets extremely hot in the summer, and the temperature was 110 in the shade, which means if you take your thermometer out in the sun, it's going to be 115, 120, 124 in the sun. Nobody takes their temperature in the sun, but they should take a reading out in the sun occasionally, so they know, because generally whatever the temperature is in the shade in area like Tucson, um, the temperature is going to be anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees hotter in the sun. And if you work outside, if you're on a hike, you're on a bike ride, you're in the sun, you're not in the shade. So I don't understand why people can't get that through their head. And it's the same thing. I lived in New York for like 26 years, and if you're outside in the summer, and unless you're hiking down a trail, in the woods, if you're out in the field or something working, like I used to work on a farm years ago, you're in the sun. Or if you're on a road crew, a lot of times you might be in the sun. So you're exposed to a lot higher temperatures, which exacerbates the issues of dealing with heat. So for my little backyard, my two little dogs, they're Chihuahua Chinese crested mixes. They don't have a lot of fur, so they kind of get cooked by the sun. I don't want them to get skin cancer. I don't want to get that myself either, because I'm outside my little backyard a lot doing things, either training or experimenting with things or building or working on a project. So I built myself a little awning, and you can probably see part of it here. I'll show you a little better look at that. This is a little close-up view of the bracket, and you can kind of see how I made that. It just slides into that bracket I welded up. Um, I actually made a mistake and had the top part come out straight, and I had to angle it upward. And then the one on the other end, the higher end, I had to angle down to get my slope the way I wanted it. And I just drilled holes and put cotter pins in it so I could take this thing apart and remove it whenever I want, if my wife and I ever decide to move. And then if you look at it, you can see how I laced it. Hopefully this will give you a little better view of what's going on. And you can see on the far end where the light's kind of shining through, what I did is, in order to make this where I could handle it, I made this 6 foot by 8 foot. And then the other one 6 by 8 foot. And then this one is 8 by 8, and it overlaps this one, so I can get a little airflow underneath it. And then it wasn't one huge panel that I had to hook up. And basically I just laced this so it's kind of like a trampoline. I use paracord, which is UV resistant to a certain degree. This is used billboard vinyl, and if you use billboard vinyl with an advertisement on it, you have to have an advertisement facing down so no one can see it, and the backside is white. Though this does have some little pinholes that I could repair. I have some extra vinyl left over, and I can actually repair it using vinyl adhesive. That is called HH66, I believe. That gives you a little bit better view of what I'm doing here. And what I did is I used a little grommet machine to install this. So these are the little grommets that I use. They're just 3/8 inch, and they're plenty big enough. The cheaper ones that I got with a little handheld grommet installer, the diameter isn't quite as big as these brass ones, or this other kit I got actually works a little bit better. It grabs the grommet better on both sides. And this is the billboard vinyl material. You can see it's got mesh through it, vinyl on both sides, and it's all vulcanized together kind of, and this stuff doesn't tear. It's pretty hard to tear. You can cut it with scissors pretty easily. And the grommets actually install better, doubling it up. Plus it gives it more strength. And so what I did is I just laced it, and I laced each section of it on its own. I didn't lace all the way around in one continuous piece of paracord. And that way I didn't have to drag as much cord through here all the way around, which would have been a pain in the butt. So I could use a shorter section of cord, and then if something happens to this one end, I could replace that cord and not have to touch the rest of it. The other thing is I can adjust either side or either end easily just by grabbing the paracord and pulling it tighter and working my way back around and then retying that end. So that's why I did it that way. I had originally tried a grommet toolkit that I'd picked up at a hardware store, a Home Depot, and it has 6 3/8 and 6 1/2-inch grommets in here and a little kit to put it all together. And the issue with it is if you're only doing, you know, maybe 5 or 6 grommets, a kit like this will work. But if you're doing more than that, it doesn't work very good. It's, you know, the grommet kit itself, the metal is just basically mild steel, and it started wearing out. And after about 6 or 7 grommets, it started making the grommets funky where they had a real sharp edge on it. And that kit was like $8. So what I did is I got a grommet machine. It's just a lever, and you can load a grommet in at a time. And with this grommet kit from a Home Depot, you actually have to punch a hole through the material first, and then use the grommet installer with a grommet. Whereas with the grommet machine, the grommets punch a hole through the material at the same time as it sets the grommet, so it's much faster and it does a way nicer job, so it's very worth it. This was like $8 and it comes with 12 grommets, and the grommet machine I got on like a sale. It was like, I don't know, $50, shipping included, I believe, and it came with like 300 grommets, so well worth it. And the thing is rugged, and I can actually use it for other projects down the road, so I'll be showing that in another video. But it kind of gives you an idea how I did this, and it's pretty easy. And if I did this again, I won't even bother with used billboard vinyl, because I think this was like a 10-foot by 25-foot piece I bought, and there was rips in it on the sides, and then these little pinholes that I'll have to patch. But and new billboard vinyl is only like $10 or $20 more for the same size piece, a 10-foot by 25-foot piece. So if I ever have to redo this, I'm just going to buy new and not worry about this, because it didn't really save all that much money. And then I had to deal with, you know, it's got bird poop on it and little holes here and there that I need to patch. So another critical thing I'm doing is, you can see on the end, I have this little flap that hangs down, and I can tie it up out of the way so I can get better airflow. But in the morning, the sun just beats right through this little tunnel here during this time of the year, and it heats up my backyard tremendously. So having that down there does block the breeze a little bit, but it keeps the sun from blasting through here initially. And then, as you can see on the wall there, the sun comes through this little privacy screen, and my little dogs will lay down there, and they're laying in the sun still and getting cooked by that. So I got a piece of billboard vinyl on the floor with grommets, and I'm going to set that up where I can hang that and block that off just during a certain part of the time of the day. Then I can remove it and tie that flap up out of the way, and that way I'll get more airflow through here as soon as the sun's a little higher. So, and so far it's worked pretty good, because it's lowered the temperature in my backyard. I've shown a picture before, and I've taken pictures where it's been 122 back here. And in the shade it'll be like 110. So now with this up here, whatever the temperature is in the shade that the news reporter is giving, and what my thermometer reads in the shade, is what the temperature is here. So it's reduced my temperature in my little tiny backyard by about 10 to 15 degrees, depending on the conditions, which to me is a good thing. So sometimes you need to learn how to adapt to your environment, and other times you have to adapt your environment to you. And globally, on a larger scale, you can't do that, but on a small microcosmic scale, you can, by clothing you wear or the food that you eat. It affects your metabolism. It can help boost your heat output, especially in an environment where it's colder. Or in this case, rather than coming out here and trying to work when it's raining or the ground's wet, I have electrical cords laying around and I'm welding. I don't want to get electrocuted. I can actually come out here and work in the rain now because this protects me from it, and it also protects me from some of the heat and from the UV of the sun and other issues. So there you go. I'm working on this other project now, and I might show you a little bit of that. I have these old cotter pins that have been used before. They're kind of a little banged up, but I'm going to repurpose these. I pulled them out of something where they were bent and straightened them out pretty good. So what I did is I bent them into a little T. And so what I'm going to do is I take my paracord and I lace this paracord in and out of the holes of my billboard vinyl that I'm going to hang on the end of the fence. This little T is going to drop down into this part of the fence. So I'll lace these into it, and these will drop down into here, and then I'll turn them sideways. Now the issue you quickly see is this T will grab plenty good, but the problem is because my line runs horizontally, is there's tension put on it. It tips the T and it forces the T back straight, so it's just going to come out of the hole. So what I need is a little loop to connect the cotter pin to my paracord. So what I decided to use is coat hanger wire that I have laying around. You don't see that much anymore, and this will just go through here like this when I lace everything up, and then this would just be inserted, pulled like that, and then when there's tension on here it'll hold. And then to remove that, I can simply just turn it sideways or slide it up out of the way. So that's what I'm going to be making, these little rings, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so this is a little ring I made. I could wrap this around several times and use baling wire. This coat hanger wire is actually stiffer than baling wire, so it works really good for these little rings. I don't have a hog ring pliers that take a little C-shaped, U-shaped piece of metal, and then it's a special plier with a groove in it that crimps that around, and upholstery shops use them, particularly for couches and furniture and automotive seats, things like that. And plus, when it crimps it like this, it always crosses the two pieces of wire, and you got these sharp pieces of wire sticking out. So I didn't want that because I don't want it really abrading my paracord. So I wanted a pretty good ring here, and in order to do this, I simply just took, and to make that little coil, this is just a 1/4 inch drive, 3-inch extension from my little ratchet set. I just took a pair of vice grips, I put this on the flat, and then I clamped it. Pretty tight, and you can see how that is. And then it's just a simple matter of winding this around here like this. It's pretty easy to do, and it'll spring open a little bit wider than what you actually rolled, and then you just slide that off there and cut it. So to make my little ring, I already cut that once. I'll just come in here and cut it really close again. I'll just grab this with a couple pair of pliers, open it up a little bit, like that. Slide that in here. Grab your pliers, squeeze it back. that line up pretty good. And then that one actually hits, so I don't really need to crimp it any closer. If there's a little gap, just squeeze it with your pliers carefully, and there you go. So I just need to make 7 more of them for my purposes. And the interesting thing with rolling this up is I've actually made rings that way. This is actually a ring I made out of baling wire, and I let it rust a little bit, and then I actually painted it with clear coat. Makes a nice little ring. I filed these edges off a little bit, and I actually smeared a little JB Weld in here to adjust the size a little bit and to keep the coils from popping out. And then this is another one I made. This is 1/8 inch rod, and I did the same process, though this one I tack welded inside a little bit. And the same thing as I clamped a piece of rod onto a bar, wrapped the rod around, cut it off where I wanted, and made myself a nice rustic little ring. So there you go. There's a lot of things you could do with wrapping wire around a rod or a piece of pipe. And to give you an idea, this is just another little ring I made. It's made out of part of a dog leash. I just sewed it together, and it's made out of fabric, and I can wear this little ring too. And the nice thing about that is it folds flat. You can tuck it into a wallet. So, and this is one of them silicone rings. This one my little dog Whiskey got a hold of and caught him chewing on it. But it's a good ring to wear that's safe, where if something catches it, snags it, it'll just rip, and it's not going to rip skin off my finger. So there you go. I'm going to complete this little project. I just wanted to show that to you, because whatever you have material wise, learn to adapt to your situation and learn to improvise with what you have, and you can overcome that situation, that scenario, that challenge that you're facing. So you always want to think outside the box as much as you can, and that's why it's so cool to work with your hands, because it gives you more experience in doing that. Sure, working on computers and stuff, you're using your mind, but this way I'm using my mind and my hands, and it kind of reinforces things more. And so then when it comes to your actual physical training, depending on your circumstances and where you're at, you don't always have access to things that you'd like to have. A gym, maybe you're somewhere for a couple months and you want to keep training, well, you could figure out a way to do it. So doing things like this helps expand your mind and your ability to see things differently in that sense. Okay, so you could probably see how much light is coming through that fence down there, and that's why I want to block that off. It gets pretty intense and it creates even more heat back here. So, and then my little dogs will lay in that and they're getting cooked. And that's pretty much once the sun gets up, an hour or two later, it's shining through here, and the flap at the top I can actually push against the fence and tie off, so I could block off some of the light up there. And then when late fall hits, the sun's going to be more southeast when it rises, so it's not going to be shining back here, and then I can just remove this out of the way. Or around 2 o'clock or so, when the sun's higher in the sky, or 1 o'clock, I can actually take this and tie this flap up so I'll get a little better airflow, and then I can remove this when the sun's no longer shining through here. So just to show you what I was doing is, you already saw these little toggles that I made, these little T-toggles out of used cotter pins, and then the little link, little ring I made there. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to thread these through here one at a time, and then I'm going to thread this. Then what I'll do is I'll weight that end, and then I'll put tension on this, and I'll pull this fairly snug, make sure there's no wrinkles in my material, and I'll tie this off on this end. Oh, I don't know how well you can see this. I tucked this flap for right now behind the fence. There's no neighbor living next door, so nobody to complain to me. And I'm just going to take these little toggles and drop them between these fence slats. And at first this might be kind of loose as I'm working my way across, but I'll be able to get it fairly snug. I don't know if you can feel it. I know you can't, but I can already tell a little bit of a difference from the sun not just pounding in here so much. So this is what I'll do, and it hangs here pretty good, and whenever I want I could easily remove this. I can roll it up whenever I want and get it out of the way, so it's not a big issue. So there you go. This is my solution to adapting the extreme heat of Arizona to my own liking as much as I can. And the other thing, if I needed to, I could set up a fan. Of course, it just blows hot air, but I could also set up like a little swamp cooler out here, or even like a little AC window unit if it became necessary, to keep myself cooler when I'm training, because it gets pretty hot. One of the best things to do out here in Arizona is to do your work early in the evening. When the sun goes down, it cools down a little bit, but not a whole lot. It's still 90, 100 degrees in the evening. So this morning it's like 85. It's just miserable, and the humidity is higher this time of year because of the monsoon, even if we don't get rain. So I don't know if you can see, I'm sweating just standing here, dripping off my face. I worked out this morning for a little bit, went outside, did some training out in the parking lot, did some of it in the shade under the carport and some in the sun, doing some sledgehammer training. In just 15 minutes I was drenched. So there you go, do what you have to do. So this is Walter, and I'll see you in the next video.